The distress beacon pulsed through the void of space, its signal carrying the desperate pleas of 50,000 souls trapped in the failing Syntheri mining colony. The massive habitat domes, once a testament to alien engineering, now groaned under pressures that would make Earth's deepest ocean trenches seem hospitable. In the colony's central chamber, Chief Engineer Clara watched through reinforced windows as hairline fractures spider-webbed across the outer dome's surface. Her antennae twitched with each new crack, each one a reminder of their increasingly desperate situation. Around her, thousands of her people huddled together, their bioluminescent markings dimmed with fear. The children, normally bright with curious energy, clustered close to their parents, their usual cyan glow faded to a dull gray. Central support failing in Section 7, the colony's AI announced, its translated voice eerily calm. Estimated structural integrity at 27% and declining. Clara moved to the communications hub, her movements deliberate despite the urgency coursing through her. The Galactic Council's response had been swift but utterly useless. Their most advanced rescue ships, proud examples of modern engineering, had crumpled like drone shells when they attempted to reach the colony's depth. The pressure at this level of the gas giant's atmosphere was beyond anything their ships were designed to handle. "We need options," Colony Administrator Venta demanded, her facial ridges flushed dark with stress. "The Council's ships can't reach us, and our own vessels were destroyed in the initial pressure surge." Clara's mind raced, recalling something that had fascinated her years ago. She had watched a documentary about Earth's oceans, specifically about massive creatures called sperm whales that dove into crushing depths that would destroy most submersibles. The documentary had gone on to showcase human engineering inspired by these oceanic giants, massive diving suits and reinforced vessels that operated in pressures that seemed impossible. "There might be one option," Clara said, her voice steady despite the doubt she saw in the administrator's eyes. "But you'll need to keep an open mind." She pulled up the Galactic Communications Array, bypassing the usual council channels. Her colleagues watched with mixture of confusion and desperate hope as she composed a message to a rather unexpected destination: Earth's Deep Sea Rescue Division. The humans. Administrator Venta's ridges pulsed with disbelief. Their technology is centuries behind the Council's best ships. How could they possibly help? A particularly loud groan from the habitat structure punctuated her question. Clara's antennae straightened with determination as she sent the message. "Because, Administrator, sometimes the oldest solutions are the best ones. These humans don't just work in crushing pressures. They've built their entire underwater civilization around mastering them. While we've been using force fields and energy barriers to keep pressure out, they'd been learning to work with it for centuries." The message sent, streaking across space toward Earth. Clara watched the transmission confirmation with all four eyes, her hearts beating in an anxious rhythm. Around her, the colony's children had begun to sing the traditional songs of their people, their voices echoing through the cramped chamber. The sound carried both fear and hope. Fear of their current predicament, but hope that somehow, someone would find a way to save them. Another crack appeared in the outer dome, drawing gasps from the crowd. The AI's voice returned, somehow even more detached than before. "Outer dome integrity at 23%. Inner reinforcement protocols engaging. Caution advised." Clara turned back to her console, adding more detailed specifications about their situation to the transmission. The pressure readings alone would seem impossible to most species, but something in her gut, or perhaps in all three of her stomachs, told her that the humans wouldn't be intimidated. She had seen the footage of their deep-sea operations, watched them treat conditions that would kill most species as just another day at work. As the last of her message transmitted, a new crack split across the dome, with a sound like breaking ice. The children's singing faltered for a moment, then resumed stronger than before. Clara joined in, her own voice adding to the chorus as they waited for a response from Earth. She could only hope that these humans, these masters of the deep, would prove to be as remarkable as she remembered. The fate of 50,000 souls, now rested on what many in the galaxy considered a primitive species. But as Clara watched another support beam groan under the immense pressure, she couldn't help but think that perhaps primitive wasn't always a disadvantage. Sometimes, the simplest solutions were the most elegant and the most effective. Captain Sarah Chen was tending to her rooftop garden in New Singapore when her neural implant pinged with an urgent message. Her weathered hands, scared from 2 decades of deep-sea rescues, paused over the tomato plants she'd been carefully pruning. The message bore the distinctive signature of the Deep Sea Rescue Division, a division she'd retired from just 6 months ago. Priority Alpha, the message began. Her augmented reality display projected the details of the Syntheri situation directly onto her retina. As she read through the pressure specifications, her eyebrows rose. The numbers were almost double what they dealt with in the Challenger Deep. Well, she muttered, already reaching for her emergency go-bag. Retirement was getting boring anyway. Within 30 minutes, her quantum-linked communicator was alive with familiar voices. Deep Dave Martinez was first to respond, his gruff voice carrying the same excitement it had 20 years ago, when they'd pulled off the impossible rescue in the Puerto Rico Trench. Pressure readings are off the charts, Cap, Dave's voice crackled through the comm. Reminds me of that job we pulled in 43, remember? When we had to modify the suits on the fly. How could I forget? You were humming Yellow Submarine the whole time. Sarah replied, already boarding the hypersonic transport to the DSRD headquarters in Guam. Is Maria in? Already running simulations, came Maria Pressure Queen Volkov's voice, her Russian accent thick with enthusiasm. These readings, they're beautiful, Sarah. We'll need to modify everything, but the basic principles are sound. Physics is physics, whether it's water or alien atmosphere. The transport's windows displayed the Pacific Ocean rushing beneath as Sarah pulled up the crew manifest on her neural display. Besides Dave and Maria, 10 other veterans had responded to the call. Each name carried stories of impossible rescues, of moments when human ingenuity and sheer stubbornness had snatched victory from the jaws of defeat. There was Jack, the Fish Thompson, who once swam through a collapsed tunnel in a prototype suit to save a trapped research team. Lisa Patel, whose understanding of pressure dynamics had revolutionized deep-sea architecture. Carl Steady Hand Schmidt, whose micro-adjustments to equipment under pressure had saved countless lives. Team, Sarah broadcast to all of them. I know most of you were enjoying retirement, but there are 50,000 aliens about to learn why humanity never gave up on mechanical solutions in favor of fancy force fields. We've got 12 hours to modify our equipment for space and alien atmospheres. Can we do it? The responses came back instantly, a chorus of affirmatives mixed with the kind of dark humor that only people who regularly worked in crushing depths could appreciate. At DSRD headquarters, the cavernous engineering bay quickly transformed into a hive of activity. Maria's team began running structural analyses on their deepest-rated suits, while Dave supervised the modification of their largest pressure vessels. The distinct smell of plasma welding filled the air as they reinforced critical points with new alloys. Sarah stood at the central command station, directing the organized chaos while reviewing the latest data from the colony. The Galactic Council's representatives had arrived, their expressions a mixture of doubt and desperate hope as they watched humans work with what they considered primitive technology. Captain Chen, one of the alien observers, approached, their translator struggling to convey their skepticism. These pressure suits, they seemed so basic compared to our quantum field technology. Sarah smiled, running her finger along a deep scar on her left hand, a souvenir from a rescue at 30,000 feet below sea level. Sometimes basic is better. Your quantum fields failed because they tried to negate the pressure. Our suits work because we learned to work with it instead of against it. A cheer went up from Maria's station as the first successful test results came in. The modified suit materials were holding up against simulated pressures even higher than what they'd face at the colony. Across the bay, Deep Dave's team had finished reinforcing the first rescue vessel, its hull now gleaming with new ablative coating designed for atmospheric entry. 6 hours ahead of schedule, Sarah announced, checking her watch. "Let's run full systems checks and load up. Those people have waited long enough." As the equipment was loaded onto the orbital transport, Sarah gathered her team for one final briefing. Looking at their faces, some young, some weathered, all determined, she felt the familiar surge of pride. These were the people who ventured into Earth's most hostile environments, who had learned to dance with pressures that could turn bones to powder in an instant. "The galaxy thinks humanity is primitive because we still use mechanical solutions," she told them, her voice carrying across the bay. "Today, we're going to show them why Earth's deep-sea veterans are anything but primitive. Suit up, people. We've got lives to save." As her team dispersed to their stations, Sarah took one last look at the pressure readings from the colony. Numbers that would make most species quiver in fear only made her smile. They had trained their entire lives for conditions like these. Now it was time to show the galaxy what humanity's primitive solutions could really do. The orbital shipyard above Earth hummed with unprecedented activity as the deep-sea rescue team worked to retrofit their vessels for space operation. The massive form of the DSV Challenger, named after both the historic space shuttle and the ocean's deepest point, hung suspended in the construction cradle, its hull gleaming under the harsh work lights. Deep Dave Martinez stood on a floating platform, his welding torch casting blue-white sparks as he reinforced the ship's pressure seals. Each weld was a work of art, born from decades of experience keeping vessels intact under crushing pressures. The Galactic Council's representative, Ambassador Exelith, watched from a safe distance, their 4 eyes blinking in synchronized confusion. "The colony's secondary dome has failed," Maria announced over the comm system, her voice tight with urgency. "They've evacuated 300 more people into the primary shelter. We're running out of time." Sarah Chen's voice crackled back. "Understood. Dave, how are we looking on the hull modifications?" Dave extinguished his torch, running a calibrated scanner over his latest work. "Final reinforcement complete on the Challenger. She's rated for pressures 50% higher than the colony's environment now. Not pretty, but she'll hold." The not pretty part was an understatement. The Challenger and her sister ships looked like something out of an ancient maritime museum compared to the sleek Galactic Council vessels docked nearby. Their hulls were thick with overlapping plates, reinforced joints visible at every seam. Pressure dissipation channels, inspired by sperm whale skulls, created distinct ridges along their surfaces. Ambassador Exelith floated closer to Dave's platform, their translator humming as they spoke. "These modifications, they seem so crude compared to our quantum barrier technology." Dave laughed, a sound like gravel in a tumbler. "Quantum barriers failed because they tried to fight the pressure. Our ships work with it. Every ridge, every channel, helps distribute the load. Been doing it this way since we first started diving deep, and physics hasn't changed since then." An alarm blared through the shipyard. Maria's voice returned, more urgent than before. "New data from the colony. The Foundation is showing signs of stress fractures. Their AI estimates total structural failure in less than 15 hours. Sarah's response was immediate. "All teams, final checks now. We launch in 30 minutes. Dave, get the Challenger systems online. Maria, start loading your hybrid suits. Ambassador Exelith, we'll need immediate clearance for atmospheric entry when we reach the colony." The shipyard erupted into controlled chaos. Crew members in standardized pressure suits moved with practiced efficiency, loading equipment and running final diagnostics. The hybrid suits, a marvel of human deep-sea technology adapted for alien physiology, were carefully secured in the cargo hold. Each one represented decades of human experience in working with, rather than against, extreme pressures. On the Challenger's bridge, Sarah reviewed the colony's latest structural data. The numbers were worse than they'd initially thought. The pressure wasn't just threatening the outer domes, it was working its way into the Foundation itself. If that gave way, No amount of technology, human or alien, would be able to save the colonists. "Captain," Ambassador Exelith approached, their posture conveying both doubt and desperate hope. "I feel I must warn you. The pressures at the colony's depth have already destroyed our best ships. These vessels of yours, impressive as their construction may be, are still based on primitive principles." Sarah turned from her displays, fixing the ambassador with a steady gaze. "With respect, Ambassador, those primitive principles have kept humans alive in the crushing depths of our oceans for centuries. We stopped using energy barriers underwater because mechanical solutions proved more reliable. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways." A subtle vibration ran through the ship as its systems came online. Dave's voice came over the comm. "All welds checked and double-checked, Cap. She's as ready as she'll ever be. Maria here. Hybrid suits are secured and power systems are green across the board." Sarah nodded, taking her place in the captain's chair. Around her, her crew moved with the quiet confidence of people who had spent their lives working in environments that should have killed them. They didn't need fancy technology or quantum barriers. They had something better: experience, determination, and the accumulated knowledge of generations who had ventured into Earth's deepest places. "All hands, prepare for launch," she announced, her voice carrying through every compartment of the ship. "We've got 50,000 people counting on us to do what we do best: the impossible." As the Challenger and her sister ships detached from their docking clamps, Ambassador Exelith watched in fascination. These humans, with their primitive technology and centuries-old principles, were about to attempt something that the galaxy's most advanced civilizations had failed to achieve. And somehow, watching the quiet confidence with which they worked, the ambassador began to wonder if perhaps humanity's greatest strength lay not in their technology, but in their stubborn refusal to accept impossible odds. The Challenger breached the gas giant's upper atmosphere, just as the colony's third dome section failed. Massive swirls of purple and green clouds enveloped the ship, their beauty belying the lethal pressures building around the hull. In the command center, Sarah Chen watched the pressure readings climb with the calm focus of someone who had spent their life dancing with death in Earth's deepest trenches. "Hull integrity at 87% and holding," Deep Dave reported from his station, his fingers dancing across the haptic controls. "Pressure compensators are working exactly like they do back home. Physics is physics. Doesn't matter if it's water or alien atmosphere." The Challenger's external cameras painted a grim picture of the colony below. The massive structure, once a marvel of alien engineering, now looked like a crumpled tin can. Only the central dome remained fully intact, its reinforced walls straining against forces that had already claimed its outer sections. "This is Captain Chen of the DSV Challenger to Xintheri Colony," Sarah broadcast. "We're beginning our descent. Status report." Chief Engineer Clara's voice crackled back, the translator struggling to convey her mixture of relief and anxiety. "Captain, we've lost 3 outer sections. The Foundation is showing signs of microstructure failure. Our models suggest total collapse within 4 hours." Sarah nodded to her crew. This was familiar territory, not the alien atmosphere or the distant planet, but the race against time and pressure. They'd done this dance before, in trenches and canyons that would swallow mountains. Beginning primary descent, Maria announced from the navigation station, "Deploying pressure wake generators." The Challenger's unique design, inspired by the diving patterns of Earth's deepest swimming creatures, came into play. Specialized vents along the hull created a controlled flow pattern around the ship, helping to distribute the crushing pressure. It was the same principle that allowed sperm whales to dive deeper than any other mammal, now adapted for an alien atmosphere. "All hands, prepare for maximum pressure zone," Sarah announced. Around her, the crew began humming an old sea shanty, a tradition born in the depths of Earth's oceans, where the sound of human voices helped keep the darkness at bay. "What are they doing?" Ambassador Exelith asked, their translator barely picking up the low harmonies. "Singing," Maria answered, never taking her eyes off her instruments. An old human tradition. When you're about to do something impossible, it helps to remind yourself that you're not alone. The pressure outside continued to build. Metal groaned, but held. The reinforcements Deep Dave had added were proving their worth, distributing the load just as they had in the Challenger Deep. But as they approached the colony's level, their sensors revealed an even bigger problem. "Captain," Maria called out, her voice tense. "The colony's foundation isn't just damaged, it's shifting. The whole structure is sliding toward a pressure gradient that could tear it apart." Sarah studied the data, her mind racing through options. They had faced similar situations in underwater rescues, but never at this scale. 50,000 lives hung in the balance, and their usual solutions would need to be adapted on the fly. "Launch Probe Team Alpha," she ordered. "Full sensor package. I want detailed readings of that foundation structure and the surrounding pressure fields. Dave, start prepping the external manipulation arms. We might need to stabilize their support struts directly." As the probes deployed, the crew's singing grew louder, more determined. The old words spoke of storms and survival, of holding together when the world tried to tear you apart. Through the external cameras, they could see the colony's inhabitants watching their approach, their bioluminescent markings pulsing with hope. "Probes reporting," Maria announced. "Foundation stress is worse than we thought. The main support structure is crystallizing under the pressure. We've got maybe 2 hours before catastrophic failure." Sarah felt the weight of 50,000 lives pressing down harder than any ocean. But pressured, she knew, didn't have to be the enemy. Sometimes it was about working with it, using it, the way Earth's deep-sea creatures had taught humanity to do. "All hands," she broadcast across all channels, including to the colony. "This is what we trained for. Every trench dive, every impossible rescue." It was all preparation for this moment. "Dave, begin extending stabilization arms. Maria, calculate optimal pressure distribution points. We're going to show the galaxy why humanity never gave up on mechanical solutions." As the Challenger moved into position, the crew's song reached its crescendo. Through the viewports, they could see the colony's children watching in fascination, their own voices joining the ancient human melody in an otherworldly harmony. It was a moment that would be remembered in both human and synthery history, the day Earth's deep-sea veterans brought their experience to bear on an alien world. The real work was about to begin, and they had less than 2 hours to prevent a catastrophe. But as Sarah gave the orders to deploy their first stabilization measures, she couldn't help but smile. After all, impossible rescues were just another day at the office for Earth's deep-sea teams. The Challenger's hull creaked under the immense pressure as Sarah Chen studied the holographic display showing the colony's deteriorating structure. The Foundation's crystallization had accelerated, spreading like a cancer through the support beams. Beside her, Deep Dave Martinez's weathered face was illuminated by the red warning indicators that seemed to multiply by the minute. "We've got a pressure spike building in the lower quadrant," Maria reported, her fingers flying over the sensor controls. "If it hits the crystallized sections, we'll lose the entire eastern wing. There are 12,000 people in that section alone." The numbers were brutal. Their current stabilization efforts could maintain integrity for the central dome and western sections, saving roughly 28,000 colonists. But the eastern wing, with its weakened support structure, was becoming a deadly liability. "What about a controlled collapse?" Ambassador Exlith suggested, their translator struggling to keep the desperation out of their voice. "Sacrifice the eastern wing to save the rest." Sarah watched the pressure readings climb, her mind racing through scenarios she'd faced in Earth's deepest trenches. "No, we don't sacrifice anyone. Dave, remember that situation in the Manila Trench? The underwater landslide." Dave's eyes lit up with recognition. "The controlled demolitions? Captain, that's insane. We were working with water pressure then, not this alien atmosphere. The variables are completely different." "The principles are the same," Sarah countered, pulling up the atmospheric composition data. "Physics doesn't care what planet we're on. Maria, run simulations on using shake charges to redirect the pressure wave. The Pressure Queen's fingers danced across her console, complex mathematical models sprouting in the air around her. It could work, she muttered, eyes fixed on the calculations. If we placed the charges exactly right, we could create a pressure corridor that would channel the spike away from the eastern wing. And if we're off by even a fraction? Dave asked, though his hands were already moving to the demolition controls. We could trigger a cascade failure that would crush the entire colony instantly. Sarah turned to the colony's governor, whose image was projected in the bridge's communication sphere. Governor, we have a possible solution, but I need you to understand the risks. We're proposing something that's never been attempted at this scale. If it works, we save everyone. If it fails, the governor's bioluminescent markings pulsed with anxiety, but her translated voice was firm. Captain Chen, my people have watched your team work miracles for the past hour. We've seen you treat pressures that terrify us as routine challenges. If you believe this plan has a chance, we trust you. The weight of that trust settled over the bridge like a physical presence. Sarah looked at her crew. Veterans of 1,000 impossible rescues, people who had spent their lives pushing the boundaries of what was possible in Earth's most hostile environment. Begin preparations, she ordered. Dave, you'll coordinate the charge placement. Maria, I want constant monitoring of the pressure fields. We'll need split-second timing on this. As the crew sprang into action, Ambassador Exelith approached Sarah's station. Captain, the Galactic Council should be informed of this plan. Using explosives in these conditions, it goes against every safety protocol we have. Sarah's eyes never left the tactical display. With respect, Ambassador, sometimes the safest protocols are the ones written in scars and experience. We're not dealing with theory here. We're dealing with 50,000 lives. The next 30 minutes were a blur of precise calculations and careful preparations. The shaked charges, modified from deep-sea equipment, were positioned by the Challenger's robotic arms. Each placement had to be perfect, each timing exact. One mistake would mean disaster. Through it all, the crew maintained their focus, their earlier sea shanties replaced by the intense concentration of professionals performing at their peak. They had trained for this, not this exact scenario, but for the moment when all the standard solutions failed, when only creativity and courage stood between life and death. Charges in position, Dave reported. Detonation matrix synchronized. Ready on your mark, Captain. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the familiar calm that came before the most dangerous moments. All hands, brace for pressure wave. Colony control, secure all loose equipment. This is going to get rough. She looked one last time at the simulation playing out on Maria's screen. The complex dance of pressure and explosion that would either save everyone or doom them all. But this was why humanity had never abandoned their primitive mechanical solutions. Sometimes, the boldest plans were the only ones that worked. Execute, Sarah ordered, her voice steady. In the silence that followed, 50,000 lives hung in the balance, waiting to see if humanity's deep-sea experience would prove to be their salvation or their doom. The shaked charges detonated in perfect sequence, their controlled explosions sending ripples through the alien atmosphere. On the Challenger's bridge, Maria Volkov's hands flew across her console as she tracked the resulting pressure waves. The next few seconds would determine whether their desperate gambit had succeeded or doomed the entire colony. Pressure wave moving as predicted, she announced, her voice tense. Corridor is forming. Holding. Eastern wing pressure dropping by 15%. 20%. Sarah Chen watched the readings with held breath. The explosions had worked exactly as planned, creating a temporary channel that diverted the deadly pressure spike away from the colony's vulnerable sections. But they all knew this was only a temporary solution. We've bought ourselves maybe 30 minutes, Deep Dave reported, studying the structural integrity readings. The foundation's still crystallizing, just slower now. We need something more permanent. That's when Maria's eyes lit up with the kind of dangerous inspiration that had made her famous in the deep-sea rescue community. "Captain, what if we combine our pressure suit technology with their force field generators?" Sarah turned to her chief engineer, eyebrows raised. "Talk to me." Maria's fingers danced across her console, bringing up schematics of their deep-sea pressure suits alongside the colony's failing force field systems. Their technology tries to create a perfect barrier. That's why it fails under extreme pressure. But our suits work by channeling and redistributing pressure through mechanical means. A hybrid system, Sarah mused, seeing where Maria was going. Use their force fields to guide the pressure into our mechanical distribution channels. The next few minutes were a flurry of activity as Maria coordinated with the colony's engineering team. Clara, the Synthery chief engineer, quickly grasped the concept, her own expertise in alien technology complementing Maria's deep-sea experience. "We'll need to modify the force field generators." Clara's translated voice came through, excitement evident despite the electronic tones. "Reconfigure them to work with your pressure distribution principles instead of trying to create complete barriers." Ambassador Exelith watched in fascination as human and Synthery engineers worked together, breaking down technological barriers as quickly as they solved physical ones. This fusion of technologies, it's unprecedented. "That's because most species stick to what they know," Dave commented as he helped modify a pressure distribution node. "Humans, we take what works and combine it with anything else that might help. Being primitive means we never stopped learning from everything around us." The work was intense and precise. Maria and Clara led teams in modifying the colony systems, integrating principles developed for Earth's ocean depths with advanced alien technology. Every minute counted. The temporary pressure corridor created by the explosions was already beginning to collapse. "First hybrid node coming online," Maria announced, monitoring the readouts carefully. "Power flow stable. Pressure distribution pattern holding." They watched as the new system engaged. The force fields, instead of trying to form impenetrable barriers, now worked in concert with mechanical distribution channels. Pressure that would have overwhelmed either system alone was now being efficiently channeled and dispersed. "It's working," Clara reported, her bioluminescent markings pulsing with excitement. "Station 19 shows pressure reduction of 40%. We're seeing similar results across all modified sections." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "Begin full implementation. Priority on the eastern wing and foundation supports. Dave, coordinate with the colony's maintenance crews for installation. Maria, keep monitoring those pressure patterns. I want to know the moment anything shifts." As the teams worked, the impossible was slowly becoming reality. Human ingenuity, born from centuries of working in Earth's crushing depths, merged with alien technology to create something entirely new. The colony's children watched in fascination as their homes' defenses were transformed, their natural bioluminescence brightening with renewed hope. "This is more than just a rescue," Ambassador Exelith observed, watching the collaboration between species. "This is a revolution in pressure management technology." Sarah nodded, but her focus remained on the tactical displays. They weren't out of danger yet. The Foundation's crystallization had slowed but not stopped, and the pressure outside remained as lethal as ever. But they had found a path forward, one that combined the best of both worlds. "Engineering has always been about evolution," she replied. "Taking what works, learning from what doesn't, and not being afraid to try something new when the old ways aren't enough. Sometimes the best solutions come from combining the wisdom of the past with the technology of the future." The hybrid systems continued to come online, each successful activation bringing them closer to saving the colony. But as Sarah watched the pressure readings, she knew they were still racing against time. The Foundation needed to be stabilized before they could claim victory, and that would require yet another miracle from her team of deep-sea veterans turned space rescuers. The colony's main support structure groaned like a dying beast as Captain Sarah Chen led her team through the emergency airlock. Their modified pressure suits, now enhanced with the hybrid technology they'd developed, were humanity's last line of defense against the crushing forces that surrounded them. Remember, people, this is just like the Mariana Trench. Sarah's voice came through the comm system, steady despite the stakes. Only difference is we're saving 50,000 aliens instead of a research team. Deep Dave's chuckle crackled through the channel. Yeah, and instead of water, we're swimming in an atmosphere that could turn us into diamonds. He hung upside down from a support beam, his welding equipment already deploying to reinforce a critical joint. Maria monitored the pressure readings from her position near the Foundation's core. The hybrid systems they'd installed were working, but the crystallization in the main support columns had progressed further than they'd feared. We've got multiple stress points approaching critical. Whatever we're going to do, it needs to happen fast. The scene inside the colony's infrastructure was like something from a fever dream. Human rescue workers in their bulky pressure suits worked alongside floating synthery engineers, their bioluminescent markings providing additional light in the cramped spaces. The hybrid force field generators created strange patterns of light and shadow as they redirected the crushing pressure around vital systems. "This is the worst I've seen since the Pacific Shelf collapse," Dave commented as he finished another weld. "Remember that one, Cap, when we had to redirect the entire underwater current?" Sarah finished, her mind already racing. "Maria, what if we applied the same principle here? Use the pressure itself to support the structure." Maria's fingers flew across her portable console, running calculations. "If we modify the hybrid generators to create a sustained pressure gradient, yes, it could work. Like using a river's flow to support a bridge." The next hour was a blur of precise adjustments and dangerous maneuvers. The team worked in perfect synchronization, their movements practiced despite the alien environment. Each weld, each generator modification, had to be perfect. There would be no second chances. Through the transparent sections of the colony's walls, they could see the gathered synthery watching their work. The children had started singing again, their otherworldly harmonies mixing with the human team's traditional sea shanties in a strange but beautiful chorus. "Pressure spike incoming," Maria's warning cut through the music. "Eastern quadrant, magnitude higher than anything we've seen yet." Sarah made a split-second decision. "Dave, Maria, converge on my position. We're going to create a manual pressure triangle, just like we did in the Java Trench." The three veterans moved into position, their suits' external manipulators deploying in perfect sync. As the pressure wave hit, they used their combined equipment to create a temporary support structure, their experience in Earth's depths allowing them to work with rather than against the crushing force. "Hold steady," Sarah commanded through gritted teeth. The strain was immense, even through their reinforced suits. "Clara, now. Activate the modified generators at maximum power." The synthery chief engineer's team responded instantly. The hybrid generators hummed to life, their energy fields interacting with the pressure wave in ways that defied conventional physics. The crushing force that should have destroyed the colony was instead being turned into part of its support structure. "It's working," Maria reported, her voice tight with concentration. "Foundation crystallization is stabilizing. Pressure distribution is. It's actually helping to reinforce the structure." Through their viewports, they could see the effect rippling through the colony. The deadly pressure was being transformed into a protective embrace, the very force that had threatened to destroy them now helping to hold them together. "All readings stabilizing," Clara announced, her translated voice carrying clear relief. "The hybrid systems are self-sustaining. We did it." The human team maintained their positions for several more minutes, ensuring the system was truly stable. When they finally stood down, the combined cheers of humans and synthery echoed through the colony's corridors. "Not bad for a bunch of primitive deep-sea welders," Dave quipped, though the pride in his voice was unmistakable. Sarah looked through the viewport at the alien children still singing their victory song. "Sometimes the oldest solutions are the best ones. We just needed to remind the galaxy why humanity never stopped trusting in mechanical ingenuity." As they made their way back to the Challenger, Sarah knew this was more than just another rescue. They had done more than save lives. They had shown the galaxy that humanity's experience with Earth's extreme environments had prepared them for challenges beyond their own world. The primitive solutions they had developed in Earth's oceans had proven to be exactly what was needed to face the challenges of space. 1 month after the rescue, the Grand Hall of the Galactic Council sparkled with the bioluminescence of 1,000 Xintheri diplomats. Captain Sarah Chen stood before the assembled representatives of 200 species, her deep-sea rescue uniform adorned with both human and alien commendations. Behind her, her crew waited proudly, their weathered faces reflecting the same quiet confidence they'd shown in the depths of the gas giant. The events at the Xintheri colony have forced us to reevaluate many of our assumptions, the council president announced, their translated voice echoing through the chamber. Humanity's success using what we once dismissed as primitive technology has opened new possibilities in extreme environment operations. Sarah watched as holographic displays showed the hybrid pressure management system they'd developed, now being implemented in colonies and stations across the galaxy. The marriage of human mechanical engineering and alien force field technology had revolutionized deep space construction. It's ironic. Deep Dave whispered to Maria as they watched the presentation. We spent centuries perfecting our craft in Earth's oceans, never knowing we were actually preparing for the stars. The council president continued. In recognition of humanity's contribution to galactic engineering and their extraordinary rescue effort, we hereby establish Earth as the primary training center for all deep environment operations in galactic space. The announcement sent ripples through the assembly. Ambassador Exelith, now a strong advocate for human-alien cooperation, stepped forward. The Xintheri people have already adopted many human deep-sea techniques into their cultural heritage. The songs your crew sang during the rescue are now part of our children's education. As if on cue, a group of Xintheri youth began singing one of the old sea shanties, their alien harmonies transforming the ancient human melody into something hauntingly beautiful. The human crew joined in, their voices blending with their alien counterparts in a symbol of the bridges they'd built. But perhaps the most valuable lesson, the council president observed, is that true advancement comes not from dismissing the old in favor of the new, but from finding ways to combine the wisdom of experience with the power of innovation. After the ceremony, Sarah found herself in one of the council's observation lounges, looking out at the stars. Clara joined her, the Xintheri engineer's markings glowing softly in the dim light. Your people have changed how we think about pressure environments, Clara said. We were so focused on using technology to fight against natural forces that we forgot sometimes it's better to work with them. Sarah smiled, touching the old scar on her hand, a reminder of lessons learned in Earth's depths. That's the thing about working in extreme conditions. You learn to respect the forces you're dealing with. The ocean taught humanity that lesson long ago. The observation lounge filled with other species engineers and scientists, all eager to learn from the humans who had turned their planet's harsh conditions into a training ground for the stars. Questions about deep-sea welding techniques mixed with discussions of force field dynamics as two technological traditions began to merge. Captain, a young Xintheri approached, their markings bright with excitement. I've been accepted to train with your deep-sea teams on Earth. I want to learn how you think about pressure, how you turn obstacles into advantages. Sarah saw in the young alien's enthusiasm the same spirit that had driven humanity to explore their own ocean depths. The first lesson, she said, is that there's no such thing as primitive technology. There are only tools that work and tools that don't. As the gathering continued, news arrived from Earth. The first joint human-alien deep-sea training facility had opened in the Mariana Trench. Humanity's primitive pressure suits and mechanical solutions were being studied by species who had mastered faster-than-light travel, but never learned to work with extreme pressures. We've come full circle, Maria observed, watching the excited exchanges between human and alien engineers. Every dive we made, every rescue we attempted in Earth's oceans, It was all preparing us for something bigger than we could have imagined. Sarah nodded, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. Humanity had found its place in the galactic community, not by abandoning their traditions, but by showing how ancient wisdom could solve modern problems. The deep-sea giants of Earth had risen to the stars, bringing with them lessons learned in the crushing depths of their homeworld's oceans. As she looked out at the assembled species, Sarah Chen knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy was full of extreme environments waiting to be mastered, and humanity's experience in Earth's oceans had prepared them to lead the way. The future would be built not on force fields alone, but on the combined strength of all their knowledge, both old and new, both human and alien.